Hello, everybody. I'm brand new to this, so I hope this is working correctly. My name is Julie Reynolds, and I'm the new co-chair of the program committee. And I'm absolutely delighted that we can do this electronically, even though I'm not good at it at all yet. This is a very strange time, but art has allowed us to connect with each other in so many important and meaningful ways. And I'm just delighted that we can do this today. I'd like to introduce Mona Kolko, who has been a gallery council member for about 10 years. She and I had a wonderful conversation yesterday, which was another one of these terrific connections that we can make with one another. She has been on the program committee and has arranged incredible programs many times in the past. And today she's going to introduce Margot Mudo. So I'm going to be quiet now and enjoy the time.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Julie. It's my pleasure to introduce Margot Mudo, who has been Memorial Art Gallery's head of exhibitions since July 2016. Margot is responsible for coordinating MAG's special exhibition program, and she also curates her own projects, including the mural exhibitions of Foi Crew and Her Voice Carries by artist Sarah Rutherford. Margot remains a central advocate for regional contemporary arts initiatives, artists, and arts industry practices. She's involved with local and regional activism for arts equity and economic sustainability to drive a successful social economy. Margot was the co-founder and director of Axum Gallery and Exhibition Space in Rochester. She served on committees through the Arts and Cultural Council of Greater Rochester, Garth Fagan Dance, the Diversity Task Force of Rochester, Rochester City Council, and the Neighborhood of the Arts Business Association. Margot attended the Cleveland Institute of Art and has a BFA in painting and printmaking from RIT. I met Margot during Memorial Art Gallery's preparation for the Fabric of Survival exhibit, and I can tell you that she is a consummate professional. Margot's talk is Creating People-Centered Exhibits at MAG. So let's all give Margot a wonderful Gallery Council welcome.
Thank you, Mona. I'm going to pretend that I can hear everybody clapping and ready for this wonderful presentation like we're in the auditorium at MAG, which is probably the last time that I saw many of you. I know I've met several of you, some of you I've never met before. I've been here at MAG for about 5 years, but I've been in the community, in the arts community in Rochester for my whole adult career, so almost 20 years now. And my parents are also longstanding, well-known members of the arts community here in Rochester. So I know some of you through that, not just at MAG. And I'm just so thrilled to be here that I was asked to do this presentation about the exhibitions department. And it actually evolved from a presentation I was giving that was really focused on the behind the scenes of how we create exhibitions. But one of the things I found was kind of missing from that angle was why we create our exhibitions and who we're making these exhibitions for, which is really the core question that we start with before we start doing anything with our exhibitions. So when we first get a proposal, that is the first question we ask: who is going to be our audience, and is this going to be attractive for the community in which we exist here in Rochester? So that our audience, the people part of the exhibition process is really the key right from the start all the way to the beginning. So before I get too much into that, I just want to give a little bit more background of myself so that it just brings some context. My position here at MAG as head of exhibitions is the first time I have ever worked in a museum. And it's actually the first time I really ever worked for an institution or any employer within the arts field. I've had jobs with bosses in other fields like bartending and, more administrative things when I was younger and getting started. But really, when I started my career within the arts, it was really self-started because there weren't a lot of opportunities in Rochester when I came back from art school in Cleveland to really develop a career. This was in the mid 2000s, so around 2005, 2007. There was about a 2-year period where I was really struggling to find that place. So I decided to create it myself. And it took a few years. It took a few years of really connecting into my community, getting to know other people that were doing creative and small business work within the community, and finding ways to partner and do more individual projects, which finally led to me opening my own art gallery right around the corner from MAG is where it originated. And the mission of that gallery really was to give a platform to our regional artists who didn't have a serious commercial gallery to market their work through and to show their work. And the unique thing about my gallery is, though it was a commercial gallery and selling art was really at the crux of bringing in profit, the mission around it was still centered around the community and education and accessibility. So I had a very curatorial heavy vision in that gallery, and that's how I met Jonathan. When he came to Rochester, there weren't that many galleries to visit. And when he came to see mine, it was an unusual experience because here you have an art dealer who's also acting as this community curator. And lo and behold, long story short, my predecessor, Marie Villa, who many of you know very, very well, who has also been a longtime family friend of my family's, was gearing to retire. And I was asked if I would be interested to take that position, largely in part because of the art and community aspect that I had already developed through my career. It's not often that people like myself all of a sudden get into a position on a senior level at a museum. Typically, it is a position you're groomed into, and you start young, working in museums, volunteering, and just kind of working your way up and going to school specifically for things around museum work. That was not my case. So I felt very fortunate to have the opportunity to come to MAG. That allowed me to have a much broader network of people, work with artists I never would have been able to work with, and have resources that I never would have been able to have as an individual. So one of the things that Jonathan tasked me with when I started was to really change the way we were developing exhibitions. And it started, this department really functioned more as a curatorial department for our special exhibitions. And then we have our actual curatorial department, which focuses on our permanent collection. But Marie Villa, Chio Yonema, they really were acting as curators and selecting the shows, putting up the shows, writing the content for the shows. We have other people in the department that help to do that, but it was a really insular process. And that was typical of museum work. By the time I came around, the conversation in museums world started to change. It was, we can't work so insular anymore. The museum isn't just about coming up with these scholarly exhibitions to put up on the wall and hope that people are going to come in. We have to really develop a way to invite people into the museum and tap into the things that are going to inspire them to come in. Because to be honest, art museums are not a place that the masses typically would come to. You either have an interest in art or have an interest in museums, usually have an academic entryway into something like that. And that doesn't necessarily hit all of the diverse people and backgrounds that we have in our communities. So the purpose in them, the things that a museum can offer have really evolved pretty fast, I would say, in the past 10 years. When I started this conversation about how to bring more people into the museum and work in a more dynamic way was really starting to happen. So one of the things that Jonathan and I talked about right away was we need to stop creating special exhibitions only in this department. This department does not need to be, the exhibitions department does not need to be a curatorial department. The exhibitions department needs to be a project management department. A project management department that can tie into every other aspect of this institution and our community, kind of almost as the glue that will hold all of the things and all of the people that it takes to create one, and unify it and keep everybody on the same mission and get us to our end goal. So I just wanted to start our talk with that, because that's really the foundation of how we got to this idea of people-centered exhibition development, which I have to say is not formally institutionalized here yet at MAG, but our strategic plan is extremely focused on our visitor engagement and our diversity and inclusion within our own staff and also within the audience and the people that we bring in. So when you think about creating an exhibition and the construction and all of that that goes into it, you're not typically thinking of the people aspect of it. You're thinking of the nuts and bolts. You're thinking of the construction. You're thinking of the writing of the words, all of that stuff. But really, at the end of the day, what's directing all of that work is who we're doing that work for. So I'm gonna just stop real quick and share my screen so that I can kind of walk you through exactly what I do, and you don't have to just look at me talking at you the whole time. So just give me 1 second here. Okay. And okay, I hope everybody can see that. So you saw this slide already. We'll move through. So this is the direct exhibitions team. This is my department. I will use my cursor almost as a pointer if you can see it. So this obviously is me here. I'm the head of the department. And right behind me is Laura Brill. She is our exhibitions registrar. Laura, her role is really essential to what we do, in the sense that without Laura, there is no getting the artwork in and out of this space. And they're also, she really is responsible for coordinating our facilities department, which does most of the construction in-house for us, and all of the outside vendors that we have that we rely on to help produce these exhibitions. So electricians and audiovisual people and painters, special carpentry needs, anything like that. Laura runs the show down there. And I think it's quite lovely because she's such a very sweet person, a very soft-spoken person, but she completely cracks the whip around all of these contractors and keeps everybody on task, and they love her and she's great. And I have to say, I've thoroughly enjoyed working with her. And I probably work the closest with her as far as one-on-one. And right next to me is Travis Johansen, whom some of you may have met yet, but maybe not. He has been with us just over a year. He's our exhibition designer. So he filled the very big shoes of John King, and he's doing an excellent job. I would say the transition has been pretty seamless. John has been working with us, helping on some levels, because we have a lot of ambitious projects and we can always use an extra hand. And John and Travis really work so seamlessly together. So that really couldn't have worked out any better. And right behind Travis is Chris Conway, and he's an exhibitions assistant. He's with us part-time, and Chris kind of jumps in when we need some extra help with a lot of the larger exhibitions, like our previous Judith Schechter show, which was quite the feat to produce, and is also going off to travel. So that is an extra big project because of the traveling component, and Chris is essential for helping with that. You will also see Chris in the director's office. He fills the rest of his hours assisting Jonathan and Jamie over in the administrative wing. Okay, so just to give you a sense of what I was talking about with this collaborative way of working. Like I said, it's no longer my department. It really is the whole institution. So I just wanted to give you a quick visual of the people that I will be talking about over the next 30 minutes and what they do. So when we start an exhibition, it starts with what we call our visioning team. And that's what you see right here at the top, this whole group of people here. The visioning team is made up of all of our curators, members in our academic program department, and our curatorial registrar. So we have Jonathan, who's our director, as you know, Jessica Martin, our curator in charge, myself, Dr. Niall Blunt, who's our new director of academic programs. Some of you, I'm sure, have met already. He just started in October. Nancy Norwood, who is our curator of European and Asian art. Lauren Tagliaferro's a curatorial assistant. Almudena Escobar Lopez is our curatorial assistant specifically for Media Arts Watch. So our Media Arts Watch gallery is mostly curated by Almudena. Courtney DiMartino is our permanent collections registrar, and Ebony Jones is our archivist librarian, and I have also personally titled her our interactive specialist. Ebony is on every single exhibition team because she really is the one that helps us come up with the ideas for all of those awesome digital interactives that you see throughout our exhibitions, and we'll talk more about that later. So this is the core team. We get a proposal. They come from any number of places. They can come from one of us, our board members, one of you, a visitor. There's traveling exhibition companies. There's museums that produce their own exhibitions and put them out there. There's artists that promote their own exhibitions, historians, and other curators who independently also do that. So we really get them from anywhere and everywhere. And I am the one that primarily filters most of those proposals, myself and Jess Martin, I'd say. And we bring them to this visioning team. We meet about once a month. And not only do we review proposals, but we also start to make very strategic decisions about when and how we're going to place exhibitions throughout the year, in the coming years, and also what we're doing within our permanent collection, because we don't want to necessarily always have these shows that just speak for themselves. It's always a more dynamic experience if there's some way that we can tie what we're doing within a special exhibition into other programming or other permanent collection displays that we have. And we really started that idea with our Foreman Gallery. That's the first gallery you walk into when you walk into the building. So that whole display that we had of portraits when Jonathan first started for many years, that started that idea. The point of that was really to start opening yourself up to the different ways you could see the portrait throughout the collection and throughout history. And we were asking people as they moved through our collection and through the museum to continue thinking about the things that they were learning in that first initial gallery. And that's really how we've treated every exhibition that we've had since then. Our recent one of Sam Gilliam did the same thing. It was an exhibition of his work in the Foreman Gallery, but we were asking people to think about painting differently and to take those thoughts and questions about painting, thinking about it outside the box, and to bring that with them as they walked through the rest of the museum and experienced the paintings that they were seeing. So I feel like I got a little off tangent there a minute talking about all of that. I want to get back to the team. So in order to do that, it really is essential that we have many players at the table for these discussions, because all of us on this visioning team touch the collection or touch our art programming in a different way with a different goal, and sometimes different audiences in mind. So by broadening the team of people who are vetting these exhibitions, we now have already a much more diverse palette of what we have to present just from having many voices at that table. And the other thing that I realized as I was working, that it wasn't just about the vetting process, and it wasn't just about how many different people that we were bringing through the museum on a visitor level, but it was about the rest of the institution and all the other people that we work with in the institution and how they are impacted by our special exhibitions. So how do we bring them into the process? And that's what you see down here. It really, after we go through our visioning team vetting and we decide on exhibitions we think would be good for the institution, we bring it to senior staff. And I have Patty Giordano's picture here. She's our COO. She's really the one that drives what we call our exhibition strategy. And this happens at senior staff, where we take the exhibition that we think would be good and we go through every team member and their department and go through the pros and cons of how it would impact them, the work they do, and how they see it impacting MAG from their perspective. So Sherry Bergstrom, who's our director of MAG Finance, who is right next to Patty Giordano here, she starts running through all the questions of what impact it has on our budget and our purchasing. And she works with her team to start building the list of questions that we need to ask ourselves about that. Joe and Siri work in MAG advancement, and the question for them is, are they going to be able to raise enough money? Do we have the donor capacity to do the exhibition that we want to do? And even if we don't think it's readily there, is the exhibition worth putting in all the work to cultivate a new strategy or a new fundraising base? Next, we have Debbie Foster, who runs our facilities department. Facilities works very closely with my team. They are the ones who literally do the physical production of the exhibition. We are very fortunate at MAG to have a team of carpenters on hand. Oftentimes with museums, especially large museums in bigger cities, they have to outsource a lot of that work. They don't have workshops and storage areas to be able to do the nitty-gritty construction that it actually takes. So they outsource that and they get the parts and components of exhibits delivered in. So Debbie, her questions are, how much work is it going to take to put this exhibition? How many walls? How much special construction has to happen? What are the special technological issues that we're going to need with electrical and sound and what have you? And that informs our budget greatly. So once again, it is key that we have all of these players at the table, because what Debbie says is going to inform what Sherry in finance starts saying and asking and doing. Next to Debbie, we see Rachel in marketing engagement. Well, we look at Rachel to say, do you think the public's going to be interested in this? And if so, in what ways can we engage with them? What programs do we already have established that we can tap into? What types of grants are out there that we might be able to use for resources? And what kind of marketing opportunities are out there? We're always looking to not just market within MAG, but to bring it out to the national platform. So Rachel stays very focused with those questions. And then last but not least, oh, I'm sorry, there's a random man sitting in that picture. That's supposed to be blank, is our MAG IT department. And MAG IT is with us on every exhibition, again, because they help us with the specialty interactive components to get those installed. So when we're working with facilities and we're working with outside electricians and AV people, our IT department is essential for helping to liaise on that. So I know that was a really long spiel, but I really wanted to give you a sense of how we have moved from a 3-person department developing exhibitions to a whole collaborative platform throughout the whole institution. And my role really sits in the middle of that. I make sure that everybody is coming together, everybody's on the same page, and everybody is doing what they're supposed to do and holding them accountable. So that being said, I have various tools to help me do that. And one of the tools we start with is what we call this is our ABC grid. And this is how we start assessing what our financial and labor capacity is going to be with an exhibition. We go through each department and they have to let us know whether it is an A, a B, or a C exhibition. So if it's an A exhibition, these are typically our major exhibitions like Monet, Wendell Castle, our Judith Schechter show. These are typically going to be more high profile, They're going to cost a lot more and they're going to require a lot more work. B falls in the middle. B could be a major exhibition like Alphonse Mucha. The difference with Alphonse Mucha is that was a traveling exhibition. It was already produced. We took it in and we put it up for display. So it still requires work. It still requires a lot of money. And we usually still create some of our own scholarship to go along with the exhibition, but we're not creating the whole exhibition from scratch, and the workload is a little bit less. And then our C shows mean that they're pretty straightforward and simple. They don't cost a lot. They're not going to take a lot of our time, and we can get them up pretty turnkey. The other tool I use, so what that does is the ABC grid starts to help me plan where we need to place each of the exhibitions throughout the year. So our A shows are in yellow, our B shows, or I'm sorry, our A shows are in red, our B shows are in yellow, and our C shows are in green. And what we want to see is only one red block on this page, only a couple yellow blocks on this page, and then the rest should be green. And that way I know that our workload for our teams within the institution are going to be spread pretty evenly throughout the year. And we're not doing one large exhibition after the other and really draining ourselves out. The other reason why it's important for me to look at this is for budget reasons. That's the other huge part of my job, is to manage all of the expenses that every department is having that touches this exhibition and making sure we stay on budget. As you know, any nonprofit that is absolutely essential, we do not want to overspend because it will have effects on other projects that we do. And luckily, since I've been here, we have never overspent on one of our budgets. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen for one moment and reshare it because I want to show you another tool that I use. And it's called the production timeline. And this timeline I wanted to show you, and it's not going to make any sense to you, but the point is to intimidate you with it, because I like to show everyone exactly all the steps. Not that you need to read every line, but just to see how many steps there actually is to creating an exhibition. So this is my timeline. And I'm just going to move through. It's very long. Each timeline, or each cell, each row takes me through one individual task that someone or a department is responsible for. And this timeline will start 2 to 3 years out from when we open an exhibition, all the way down to when we open it. And all the color coding you see is for me to understand what part of the process we're in. So this purple is more operational, getting all the administrative stuff together and making sure we have all the information we need to approve an exhibition. And things that you see in the orange and the yellow are all tasks that have to do with creating the content of the exhibition. And the things that you see in white are more the actual production tasks. So the things that my department is doing, the IT department is doing, and the facilities department is doing. It's the more nuts and bolts tasks that have to stay on track. So this is another tool we use that is very dense, and it's a lot to look at, but it's really my roadmap from when we start an exhibition down. And this blank column that you see on the left, this is where I actually plug in the actual dates for when things are due according to the timeline that we have that exhibition. I'm going to stop sharing one more time, because the next step, and this is all the boring stuff, don't worry, it's going to get more interesting when we get to the actual exhibition stuff. Once that production timeline is created, we use a tool called Basecamp. This is a production management tool that is really effective and has been used by many organizations. The one that I was most interested in was Forbes magazine, because this is how they managed their huge headquarters and all the remote teams that they have. So what you're looking at really is this is my home base. This is where I create teams. And then down here, I create all the projects, which is our exhibitions. And all these little circles you see are all the members that are involved in each project. So I just wanted to show you what this looks like, because this tool is completely customizable. And I spent about 2 years creating this and customizing it so that it could work specifically for our needs, working collaboratively within MAG, but also with our community partners. I'm not going to walk you through all this stuff because it's really not that important, but you can see we have sections for each things, the schedules, any documents we need to share, messages we need to send. It keeps all of our communication and all of our documents for a project in one place instead of dealing with email and dealing with different computer drives and all of those things. The bigger your teams get, the more information is going back and forth all the time. And it's really important to streamline and standardize as much as you can so that when you're a lean team like we are at MAG, you can essentially manage it all without having to keep it all in your head. It kind of automates everything for you. So by creating these tools, which were painstakingly difficult to do when you're customizing something that hasn't been created before and doing it for a way that you haven't worked before. Once we did that, it allowed us more space and time for the creative aspect of the work we do. So I am going to go back to the slideshow and we can get into the more interesting things. Okay. So this idea of people-centered exhibitions, why am I showing you this? You probably recognize it because this was the branding document for the show we did in honor of the Gallery Council just recently, this past year. What you're looking at is what we call a style guide. And this is developed by our exhibition designer and our marketing and engagement graphic designer. And what they do is they take all the information that we came up with in the exhibition strategy team, talking about audience, who we think our audience will be, what audiences do we want to tap into that we don't think will naturally want to come, and what messaging do we want to put out about this exhibition. And that's all really the same idea of what you have when you go into a marketing department and they're branding a company or they're branding a product. We're doing the same thing with an exhibition. So we worked with Pamela and some other members of the Gallery Council and Nancy Norwood, who was the curator, to develop what we call a graphic identity for the exhibition. And our designers came up with this fabulous font that really harkened back to the era of the 40s, but was a little more modern. So it still taps into the contemporary. And a color palette that really picked off of the tones that were kind of consistent in the artwork that was being shown. One of the unique things about this exhibition is it wasn't one artist. So you don't have a consistent style or color palette or anything like that throughout the exhibition. It is various works from various artists in various time periods. And how do you create an interesting space that isn't just white walls to tie all of that in together? If it's not attractive, if the design that people see before they even walk into the door of MAG isn't going to pique their interest, they might not really see the show if there's no other reason that they're going to want to come see it in the first place. We actually got a lot of really nice compliments on this graphic design because it's just not something you typically see anymore. I think a lot of museums are moving towards that very contemporary look for a lot of the things that they're doing, regardless of the show. And we take a more individualized approach. Like I said, we treat it more like how a marketing or promotion company would treat a product or an individual brand on each exhibition. And then once we go from there, that really starts to set the tone and how we're going to design the exhibition. And this process involves everybody that you saw on the visioning team. So the curators involved with the exhibition, Jonathan, even if he's not the curator on the exhibition, he has the curatorial background. So we still always bring everything by him. And our academic programs department with Niall and Ebony. They are essential to the design of the exhibition, mainly because they help with the interpretation of the content, and they also help develop the activities and the interactives. And they are also responsible for helping to connect us to community partners so that once we get to this stage, we are able to tap into people who don't work in the museum and may not have an art background, but have background and interest in the subject matter we may be dealing with, or just their general experience coming to the museum. And we want their feedback on what they think of the exhibition, what kinds of things they would like to see in it, how a design, a ground plan like this makes them feel if they had to imagine themselves walking through it. So we expand that idea of collaboration outside of just our four walls and into the community. We work with professionals in fields. We work with city and government individuals. We work with students. We work with even younger individuals. We work with seniors. We really try to tap into as many different places and demographics that we can that would make sense for the exhibition we're working on. This is the ground plan actually for Judith Schechter, and you can see it's quite complicated. And one thing that we're always trying to do, especially when we have a really dense show with a lot of work, is to make sure that the space still flows well. Because when someone walks into that space, whether they're aware of it or not, the design of the space is going to affect how they experience the show. And if it's all cramped, if it is kind of leading you only in one direction, or all the work is just kind of displayed in a very straightforward way around the wall, it can feel almost too much to look at. It's too much to digest. So we really start to focus on how we're going to build the interior of the exhibition. How are we going to put other walls in? How are we going to break up space and create groups so that our visitors can really digest the information in these pockets and not all into one story? And the physical design of that space has everything to do with that, on top of the actual writing of the exhibition and the groupings that the curator lays out. And oftentimes myself and the designer work closely with the curator to help develop what those groupings are going to be, because we are working with that checklist of artwork with the curator right from the beginning. And it's not just about how the curator wants to see the show flow. It's also about how will the space itself allow the show to flow. So that collaboration is really necessary to create a seamless experience for the visitor. I just want to take you real quick through just some behind the scenes nuts and bolts pictures. So those interior walls that you see in the gallery, those are all temporary. They come up and down all the time, as I'm sure you know, because you've all been part of MAG for a very long time. It's really our outer four walls that are permanent. So when the whole space is open, it's 5,400 square feet. And very rarely we keep it that way. We are usually always creating rooms within a room or segmenting off. So this is what the walls look like when they first go up. And these walls actually come in sections. So this is one section that I'm following with my cursor. And we keep them in offsite storage. So these are built ahead of time. We store as many as we can, so we don't have to throw any away. We can reuse them, and it helps save on material. And we really just start creating these rooms and building them up. And then just like you would in building a house, they get finished with drywall and all the finishing touches. And I always tell people every 3 months, this gallery undergoes a full renovation, and it's almost like we're building the interior of a house 3 times a year. And we have to do special things, like when we had Javier Tellez and we had to do the movie theater. We literally had to make a movie theater, not just for the aesthetic value of what a movie theater represented, but it needed to actually function like a real movie theater, that our visitors could come in and sit down comfortably. So we had real movie theater seats that we were able to find, and we had to completely retrofit this space so that we could hang a screen, bolt seats into a floor without damaging our beautiful parquet floor, do all the closed captioning and accessibility needs that we needed to have so that people could safely get in and out of a dark space. It requires special lighting, drop ceilings, carpet, all of that. And again, you don't think about that as the visitor experience, but it really, without that, without all of those components, it wouldn't come across in the way that the artist wants it to come across. And the visitor wouldn't be that comfortable experiencing it if all of those things really were in place. If we just had a regular old bench in there, it really wouldn't feel like you were in that theater. And the next step in the process after the construction is done and the painting is done is starting to lay out the work and getting a sense of where it's going to be and making sure everything is where we want it to be. This is our last show with Warhol, and you can see Jonathan here. He's the curator working with Travis and Laura, and they're placing the work. And oftentimes, even though we already have built a ground plan and we have this idea of where the work is going to go, the curator is going to come down. They're going to see the physical artwork for the first time in the space, and that can often mean that decisions get changed. So we start moving things around, and that's what you see Jonathan doing with these pieces of paper. They're images of the artwork, and he's starting to play around on that wall and readjusting where some of that artwork goes. Facilities crew helping to hang large works. These are all things we have to do. This was our Isaac Julian installation with all the screens that had to be hung. These are all outside contractors that we had to work with to do this. And again, all these pedestals were done with outside contractors because it really required someone who had the special craftsmanship to do certain types of curvatures with wood and what have you. And this was for our Wendell Castle show. Now, this idea of visitor-centered, we have in the Wendell Castle show, if you remember, we had that really large film, that documentary of him. Well, that was the first time we actually projected a film that large in the gallery. We have typically in the past done it on a monitor, a 55-inch TV monitor, which is fine. It does what it needs to do. But we were really in this idea of celebrating the life of Wendell Castle and just the grand career that he's had and the accomplishments that he's had. And then you also have an exhibition space filled with these huge monumental sculpture. I mean, some of these sculptures were weighing tons. We literally had to bring construction equipment into the building to move these things and to place them properly. So putting a TV monitor with a tiny little documentary film in there just wasn't going to give the sense of grandeur and importance that Wendell's career and his life has really given to us, not just in Rochester, but in the art world. And we wanted the visitor to have this sensibility with everything they were experiencing within the show. So we decided to project the film really large. And when the visitors came into the space, you didn't necessarily have to be standing right there to see it or to hear it. It was constantly playing, and it made the space immersed in the documentary. So you could walk through it and hear it and start playing context to what's being said in the film, to what you're looking at in the show. And again, just that visceral experience that the visitor's having, standing in front of this larger film instead of this tiny little screen, just amplifies that sense of grandeur and importance. So I want to just move quickly to Monet and you know, I've been talking about how the design of the space is really important for the visitor experience and the collaborative nature that it takes to design that space. Well, that moves into what we did with Monet. And Monet was really one of the first exhibitions that we built out into a fully interactive experience. So our activity section with coloring or paper cutting or whatever you might have wasn't just this little tiny area set off in the corner in which exhibitions typically have. We really went all out. The first thing that happened when you walked in was not only did you see your title wall, but we had a video right off to the side starting to explain the process and the vision behind Monet and the exhibition itself. And you can see here, this is Carol Aquilino, our MAG preparator. So she handles all of the framing and matting of works that we have to do, any conservation, light conservation on works on paper. And Carol's an artist herself. So we decided to utilize her voice, her opinion, her expertise in this video to talk about Monet's process. So here we are using a MAG member, using someone in our local community, talking about this artist that is almost untouchable to everybody and kind of bringing it down to our level. And instead of people just having to come in and read all this text on the wall, they can actually sit down and listen and see and connect in a different way. So we did that right from the minute when you walked in. That was a really important component. And as you moved through, we have our didactics, but when you see this map, we paid special consideration to it because we knew that we really wanted people to look at this map. We didn't want this to just be a didactic component that if you happen to be interested in finding out a little bit more, you can. We wanted to draw people's attention to it. So John King produced this very large map, and he actually had these little bubbles embossed so that they popped out and created dimension and interest. We made the didactic text panels with them pop out so that it wasn't just text on a wall again. It became an object itself that a visitor could be attracted to and start to engage with and learn a little bit more about. All these little bubbles were specific areas that Monet painted, and it directed you to more information about that. And a reading area that we always have, so that's pretty typical. The other thing that we did, which was outside the box, is instead of having a typical label that you would see right next to a painting, we decided to make these pedestals that had larger labels that didn't just talk about each painting, but within the label, we asked the visitors very specific questions about what they were looking at. So instead of telling them what they were looking at, we're asking them what they see when they look at that. And it also helps to start this critical thinking process of all the stuff that they were starting to learn as they walked through the introduction of the exhibition. Now they can apply it with the questions that we're asking in each of these paintings as they look through. So, you know, this idea of visitor engagement isn't just about having some fancy interactive. It's how we are actually creating the content and inviting people to experience that content. And that's a full view. Again, in the design, we purposely created an arced room. We called this the jewelry box, the jewel box, because we wanted our visitors to be immersed in these Monets and to have a very intimate experience with them. And then, of course, this was the major component and what everyone typically thinks of when you say gallery interactive or visitor engagement within an exhibition. It typically, the first thought people have is digital activities and touch screens and you know, anything flashy like that. We don't like to do digital interactives just for the sake of doing it. I know people are really attracted to them, but they don't always enhance an exhibition. Oftentimes I go to other museum exhibitions and I find the interactives to fall short because it feels like they did it just to put that flashy component in and hope that it was going to draw visitors. And oftentimes they don't even work properly. We did not want to do that here. We hired a person who specializes in software development, and he worked closely with myself and Nancy and Marlene, who at the time was our academic program advisor, and we custom developed all of these interactive programs for Monet. Each screen had a different way you can engage with the paintings. And we didn't want it to just be like, oh, here's a Monet on a screen and you can touch it and get in closer. We wanted people to actually get something out of this. It needed to enhance the exhibition. So all the research that Nancy had done to unveil how Monet was actually seeing his environment and painting his environment, all the research she did with in partnership with the Buffalo Imaging Society to do all the X-ray and UV images to understand how he layered colors, we decided to make those accessible through these exhibitions. So people, or through these interactives, people could go in and literally start dissecting each painting. So it's not just getting up close and looking at a detail, you can peel away the layers of how Monet was actually painting here. And again, yeah, it's fun. A visitor sits down and they can start playing with this computer, but they're learning something that they wouldn't have been able to learn by just looking at the painting itself. And then we had another exhibition off of that. And this is a little atypical, but again, we did this. It was called Seeing in Color and Black and White. And this was a modern and contemporary show, taking the same components of how vision and color work when you interpret it into a painting that we were talking about with Monet through his process, and applying it to the more modern and contemporary works, because there's a science behind how we see, and there's a science behind how we see color. And those things are universal. It doesn't matter if it was Monet or Maleko Ngozi in today's day and age. These are principles that apply. And op art is a really great way to actually visually see the science behind that. So Andrew Capetta, one of our academic curators, did this companion show that was within the gallery. And again, just gave our visitors a different way of experiencing the things that they were learning in the Monet exhibition. And I just have a few more minutes and we're wrapping up. Josephine Toto was another exhibition where the design was really important. We had a lot of work and they were small and we didn't want to overwhelm people, but we also wanted to create a sense of intimacy and this idea that you were walking through Josephine Toto's subconscious. Much of her work had to do with the dream world and the spiritual world, the things that are more ephemeral. So we kind of led you through these tunnels of work, which helped to, again, segment them so people could digest it better, and not create this, overwhelming sense of a ton of small work all over the place. Another thing we did, because Josephine Toto was an untrained artist, I say that with hesitation, but I mean in the sense that she did not go to art school. She came into it later in her life. But there's still a lot of art historical referencing in it and other cultural referencing in her work. So instead of making, again, a traditional text panel, we started incorporating other pictures and other references, not just as side notes, but actually creating it as an object on the wall so that people could really want to read it and want to see what else they can learn within these works. And this is just a close-up of another one. So the text panel itself is attractive to look at and is going to draw people to it. It's not just a side note to the work. We created special activities that families could do as they walked through. A lot of the imagery in this work is hard to digest. How do you explain some of this stuff to children? Well, a lot of these activities were developed to help families do that, especially if they were coming in with children. But it also is an experience that you could have cross-generation. So if you have parents coming in with their parents and their children, really anyone in that group could get something out of these activities. And this Josephine Toto show really set the stage for how we are approaching all of our exhibitions since then. And that's why I'm showing you these shows, because these were really the first that we completely were able to dive into this idea of visitor-centered exhibition. We had the typewriter tales. We bought an old antique typewriter that someone restored for us, and people could actually sit down and write like she would and create their own stories. And we also had an area where they could create their own images. And then Schechter, we did the same thing real quick. You guys all just saw that, so I don't need to go into great length. But this was, again, this was very interactive heavy. The design had to be very different. We wanted to create more of a sanctuary feel that felt intimate and deep, but also light and airy. And that was a difficult thing to do, but I think we accomplished it well. And the other thing that we did to help guide visitors through the space is these end caps on the walls. We decided to activate them by using them to put quotes by Judith that gave a little more insight into her thought process behind the work and the process behind her work. So it wasn't just any old quote. They were quotes very specific to the process and thoughts within each section of the group. And this show was a little different in the sense that we had a main entrance, which was in the front, but we also had this entrance, which took you into the show through our activity area. And then you see our Judith Schechter piece right in the background. And really, even coming at it from the sideway, it looks like you're walking into the beginning of a show. So all aspects of this exhibition is very attractive and engaging and welcoming to invite people into the space if they're not exactly sure what they're about to look at. And this was the interactive space, which was pretty robust. I'd say our most robust to date. We had our sketchbook component. You can see the sketchbooks over to the right. That we had open. Those were Judith's actual sketchbooks, but here on the touch screen, Ebony scanned them all in and you were able as a visitor to actually go through every single page of her sketchbook. We had a call and response activity right here in the center where we actually were able to use that information people put down about their experiences in this exhibition, and we used it for our evaluation and measurements that we do at the end. So we want to know how people experience a show and how they feel about the show, because that helps inform what we're going to do with our next shows, what works and what doesn't work. We have these two tables off in the back, and those were where you could actually create your own stained glass with vellum and different transparent papers and transparent materials. Shapes were already pre-cut out, images already pre-cut out. We had a digital make your own Judith Schechter, where you could take images that Ebony was able to select out of each show or each piece and kind of create your own in a digital capacity. And then we also had this film that was made specifically for our exhibition about Judith Schechter, featuring Judith Schechter, dives much deeper into her process. And next to that, we went the extra step in getting actual sample of her work and how she layers all of her glass together to get that really rich, deep color and sense of pattern. We didn't want to just throw these in a display case, so we went the extra mile and lit it with LED lights, making it really attractive and something that even a kid who doesn't care about stained glass is going to want to come up to this, look at it, hopefully get curious and read a little bit more and find out a little bit more about what they're doing. And this is just a close-up of the sketchbooks and that touch screen. And last but not least, we have our upcoming AIDS exhibition, our Up Against the Wall, Art Activism and the AIDS poster. And though I don't have much to show you yet because we're still in planning mode, I just wanted to mention this because this show, we are really diving deep into our community partnerships. Our community partnerships are throughout medical organizations and institutions, public health organizations and institutions, people who work in education, students themselves, people who have been affected by AIDS, either directly or through people they're close to. We're working with local media. We have people all across the board who are on an advisory board with us and helping us develop various focus groups so that we can make sure that we are representing all the difficult content and diverse content in this exhibition properly, and that we're speaking to people the way that they want to be spoken to. So we're actually going to be starting our first design meetings with the community come January, and I'm very much looking forward to that. Travis is working on our ground plans right now, and we will present the exhibition to some of our community members, start beginning to show them our designs, and starting to ask them questions about what kinds of things they'd like to see in the exhibition to help them engage more with that. So I hope that was somewhat informative. I know it was a lot of information. I don't know if we have a lot of time left, but if there's any questions, I'm happy to take them. And that's really the gist of how we put together an exhibition, and yeah, what it looks like, who's involved, and what we do.
Thank you, Margot. We do have a couple questions here, and I do invite everyone, if you have any questions, you could submit them in the Q&A. We do just have a few minutes. One question is, what was the most challenging exhibit that you had to develop?
Well, first I'll say that every single exhibition is challenging because there is no two exhibition that's alike. And especially since Jonathan has come on board and we've had a lot of new staff, there's a lot of things we've never done before. So that being said, I would say our media commissions, our Isaac Julian show, Javier Tellez, and a lot of the programs that we do in the Media Arts Watch, I would say we're probably the most challenging for me to date, mainly because not only have we not ever done exhibitions like that before, but very few museums and exhibition professionals have done exhibitions like that before. So we were really paving the way on how to display a lot of these works. Yes, Isaac Julian and Javier Tellez have been showing in museums the majority of their career, but we commissioned work from them, and they took that opportunity to do things that they've never done before. So we, as an exhibition team, worked very closely as collaborative partners with the artists. In fact, we were almost like the artist studio here in Rochester while they were in their actual art studio. So we would take direction from them and even help create some of the components that typically an artist or their studio would be creating. First and foremost, we really all relied on each other to do that. It was very stressful in the sense that there's no roadmap, and it was a huge project. There was a lot at stake and a lot of money, a lot of equipment that we have never used before, and a lot of mistakes were made. But the wonderful thing about working at MAG is we are 100% supportive of each other. We were all doing things for the first time, and we pick each other up when we do make those mistakes. And at the end of the day, though they were the most challenging exhibitions to put up, they were also some of the most rewarding exhibitions, especially with the relationships that were built and the things that we learned out of them.
Thank you. And one more question, how much lead time do you need to put on an exhibit?
So the shows that you see in our docent gallery, the main gallery, the 5,000 square foot, those really start anywhere from 5 to 3 years out. And the 5-year point is usually when we're producing an exhibition ourselves. So the Media Arts Commissions, Josephine Toto, Monet, Judith Schechter, those all took about 5 years to from conception to completion. Typically with a traveling show, I would say it's usually around the 2-year mark. We might not even have to go out that far, but even though we take a traveling package show, we're always adding some kind of component to it that's produced here at MAG. So we like to give ourselves that time to produce our own scholarship around it. And then our smaller shows can be anywhere from a year to 6 months, just really depending on when they come to us and how difficult they are to put together. I will say, I'll add on top of that, the other question I get a lot along with that question is, how many exhibitions are we working on at one time? Anywhere from 10 to 20 at one time. We manage 4 spaces in the museum. Each space has 3 slots, and So that coming year that's about to happen, you're already working on 12 shows. And then you have about 5 to 8 more shows that are still far away in the distance, but you still have to touch in on every month or every 2 months or what have you. And those are always rotating out.
And a lovely comment here from Bonnie who says, thank you, Margot. So much work for just one show. Certainly will appreciate each show more. Amazing. Kudos to you and your team.
Well, thank you. And I have to thank all of you, because really the Gallery Council is what makes most of these exhibitions possible. The work you guys do, the fundraising you do for us, the support that you give us is usually one of the bigger buckets of support that we have. So I think you guys should be giving yourselves a round of applause. This is a group that a lot of museums don't have either, a resource that a lot of other arts organizations can't tap into. And one of the reasons why we can do complicated shows and ambitious shows is because we have people like yourselves who are so committed to supporting the work we do by doing your own work and giving us the fruits of that work that you do. So we are forever grateful for that.
Thank you, Margot, and I will let Julie end the program for us.
I'm sort of speechless. That was so impressive. I've hung around the gallery since 1981 when I did my docent training, and I had no idea how much is involved. I mean, Margot, that was fabulous. Thank you so much. And it makes us all feel really special to have had not only the behind the scenes, but also the information about the complexity and the commonality that all goes into making these incredible experiences for us. So thank you so much. That was really illuminating. So Gallery Council will not be having a general program in January, but please mark your calendars for February 10th, when Tina DaCosta will be talking with us about a film, Brick by Brick, about diversity and inclusion. And mark your calendars March 17th, when we will have a program by Sean Dunwoody, who did the Legacy Project at East High School. Let me get this straight, The Eyes of Our Ancestors. And both of these programs are directly helpful to the vision that Margot is telling us about, that the exhibitions department has focused on, which is reaching out to the community, inviting the community into the gallery, and having our diversity and inclusion be part of our lives through art in so many ways. Also, be sure you remember that the gallery store is open and the gallery itself is open, and it's very safe. And I think we can really enjoy our Memorial Art Gallery through these next few winter months as we get closer and closer to everybody being safe again with the vaccine. I think that's all I have to say. Happy holidays to everybody.
Thank you.